there's a changing demographic all over the Western world. Baby boomers are aging out of their investing years. They're now in their withdrawal years. And so if you think about the things that they hold, it's equities, it's bonds, it's gold, it's real estate, things of this nature. And two of those things, I would argue, gold and real estate, have really been the hard money assets of choice for the last, I don't know, 50 years minimum, I would say, maybe since the mid 70s. So you have these assets in withdrawal mode for a lot of the seniors who own them. And instead now that money is being passed, either at the side of a coffin or through birthday checks or whatever to the younger generation. Well, Mike, I don't plan on buying a rental property. It's not really my bag. Kids my age, like, Mike, I'll be honest with you, I'm not that great with a hammer drill. I don't want to be working on properties, fixing dryers, putting in ductwork. I don't want to do that. I'd rather buy a hard money asset that I can custody myself. That's, fungible, immutable, uncensorable, becoming more and more important by the day, as you and your listeners know, than these other assets. And I think that's where the money's going to start to flow as the demographics continue to change.
I've been looking forward to getting a chance to talk with Joey Temprile. The Canadian Bitcoiner himself is here. Joey, there's so many things to get to, but why not start with the headline? These new all-time highs in Bitcoin. What was it, about 125,000 and change US?
Yeah, it's great to be with you, Mike. I just want to point out that every time we speak, it's right after an all-time high. And by the time I get to talk to you, I'm once again getting nuked and my friends are asking me if I'm doing okay. You are right. 125 and change, I think a few days ago. Fantastic. I want to point out, we could talk about this a little bit. A lot of things moving in Bitcoin's direction, a lot of tailwinds, but also a weird sort of headwind that we used to see and be concerned about. The gold price also ripping. Very rare that you see them ripping at the same time. And these things are part of the Bitcoin cycles. And, there's lots to talk about the shared characteristics between those two hard money assets. And we can get into a little bit about why I think that the gold price is talking to us a little bit about what we can expect to see in Bitcoin in the next 4 to 6 months.
The other thing is I've noticed is the explosion in popularity. And we talked about this a while ago. I thought it was very significant when the ETFs were okayed with Bitcoin, et cetera. And I thought, okay, you're going to get more institutional interest. But man, I was looking at some numbers this week and how much they've been acquiring. I mean, a huge demand from institutions have really helped to explode that price.
It's fun to talk about the dollar figures that I'm searching for the words. They've really just poured into this thing since day one. I don't know exactly what the number is now, but I know earlier in the week, BlackRock's IBIT became its most profitable. So successful is one metric, profitable another one entirely. Its most profitable ETF. Today, I didn't look at the numbers this morning, but I would guess, Mike, it's close to 100 billion in total inflows. An absolutely insane number. Think about the market cap of Bitcoin is only a few trillion. So to have that level of inflows, on some of these days, the inflows are actually trailing a loss in the spot Bitcoin price. You can imagine just how much those ETFs are driving price, demand, popularity, and legitimacy. And if you look at, other ETFs, obviously everyone talks about the launch of the GLD ETF years and years ago, what that did for the gold price.
Yeah.
Mike, it's been 450-ish days, 430-ish days. What do you think the next 4 years looks like? I can handle a $2,000, $3,000 down day, knowing that the likelihood that I see continued growth, all other things being equal on the back of the ETF inflows, it makes me feel good.
Obviously it was a big shift with the positive attitude coming out of the Trump administration and their election and sort of signaling that well in advance of that they would be very positive. But I was also looking at the new Japanese prime minister, sort of said that she liked this stuff, that she had a pro-crypto stance.
It's interesting. I personally have some reservations about politicians who seem to be following in the footsteps of Trump. Leaving the politics of it aside, I don't think that these politicians necessarily hold these feelings, near and dear to their hearts, especially when it comes to Bitcoin and crypto. I think that what they're seeing on the ground in their countries and in the case of the European Union, in their pseudo all-star team locker room, is that there's two avenues you can pursue. You can either get left behind, you can try and compete with what the US is doing on the crypto side. Bitcoin obviously plays a role there. And I think that more and more governments are going to start showing their cards in terms of making things easier for Bitcoin. And again, I'll catch some flack from my peers talking about Bitcoin and crypto in the same breath, but I think it's important. Allowing these things to exist and be easier to roll out to the masses. In the States, for example, obviously now there's, it's almost unimaginable. I'm laughing because a year ago, this would have been unthinkable. A standardized set of tests coming for new ETF products in the crypto space. That was unthinkable a year ago. It was illegal 2 years ago. People were going to jail for that 2 years ago. And now it's the standard sort of operating procedure, which is outstanding. In Japan's case, I believe it was their pension. It's either the Chinese or the Japanese pension. You have to forgive me. I don't remember which. Talking about a mandated allocation to gold as well. And so while these are not, it's not my preferred hard asset, it's the leaning toward these things and away from what would be considered traditionally safe assets. These are all tailwinds for Bitcoin. And we love to see this. This is a story that we've been trying to tell on the Bitcoin side for more than a decade. And it's good to see other countries coming to these same conclusions now, even if it's only because I think there's some dire straits coming here for a lot of them.
You mentioned gold, and one of the indicators I follow is the Van Eck, Junior Gold Index. So the ETF. Looking at that stuff. Well, did you see the analysis coming out of Van Eck that they forecast or project that Bitcoin could hit as high as $644,000? Now, they had a caveat. That is gold's appeal as a digital gold for younger investors takes hold. I just, the number is one of those shocking numbers, when they throw it out there.
I don't know. Why so bearish? What's 600? I shouldn't say that. 600 would be great. You and me could get a nice steak dinner at 600. We'll take the boys with us there. But I think that what I'm seeing, Van Eck is making I think a keen observation there. And it's one that we've talked about before. And we should mention again, there's a changing demographic all over the Western world. Baby boomers are aging out of their investing years. They're now in their withdrawal years. And so if you think about the things that they hold, it's equities, it's bonds, it's gold, it's real estate, things of this nature. And two of those things, I would argue, gold and real estate, have really been the hard money assets of choice for the last, 50 years minimum, I would say, maybe since the mid 70s. So you have these assets in withdrawal mode for a lot of the seniors who own them. And instead now that money is being passed, either at the side of a coffin or through birthday checks or whatever to the younger generation. Well, Mike, I don't plan on buying a rental property. It's not really my bag. Kids my age, like Mike, I'll be honest with you, I'm not that great with a hammer drill. I don't want to be working on properties, fixing dryers, putting in ductwork. I don't want to do that. I'd rather buy a hard money asset that I can custody myself. That's, fungible, immutable, uncensorable, becoming more and more important by the day, as you and your listeners know, than these other assets. And I think that's where the money's going to start to flow as the demographics continue to change.
Yeah, and you mentioned this right off the top, is that I think the motivation, momentum can play a part. There are people looking, look at something so strong, they'll jump on. But that interesting correlation between gold and Bitcoin in this term, in the motivation terms, people wanting an asset outside the normal monetary system. I think one of our projections and made it very clear for the last 3 years, we are entering a period of real monetary change / crisis. I think that's becoming a little more obvious. Obviously, it is to some people at least, and I think that still gains momentum. But I think one of them, whether it's gold you look at first or Bitcoin, correlates with the other and confirms that thesis that there is a great deal of worry right now about government and fiat currency.
It's very rare to see gold and Bitcoin moving together at this clip. Like I said earlier, the interesting thing to me, this is going a bit into the weeds, but I think your listeners will appreciate this. And if you're in Bitcoin and gold or you monitor these markets, these are deductions that you've either made or seen someone else make, and they're easy to kind of prove out. Gold moves about 90 or 120 days before Bitcoin does. So we've obviously seen a huge move in gold proportionate to its market cap. And it's certainly proportionate to expectations, even in a world of broad debasement. Bitcoin normally, Mike, if we look at 120 days, 90 to 120 days from now, as far as its 4-year cycles, its halving cycles, normally it's entering into its sort of, okay, we've peaked, we got to chop now for a bit, and we'll grind higher coming into the next halving. in a few years. If we see a move in Bitcoin early 26, it'll be the first time we've ever seen that this part of the cycle. And I'm not sure what you have to thank for that. I think a lot of people who are really true hardcore Bitcoin maximalists will say it is that people are discovering the value of this asset. Maybe true. I doubt that's the whole story. There are other people in the financial space who would say it is the ETFs that are bumping these prices up, and they're smoothing the downturns in a way that we've never seen before. Also could be true. I don't think it's the whole story. I think you have to couple those two with, like you said, this broad debasement. In Canada, we just saw stories from, I think, the National Post or Financial Times. I forget where I saw it, but I'm sure your listeners have seen it as well. The Bank of Canada considering abandoning core inflation as an interest rate metric. There seems to be a willingness all over the world to debase currencies to deal with debt as well. We have a budget coming here in Canada in less than a month where there's going to be, lipstick on a pig is too kind of term probably, but there'll be two separate presentations, one for investment, one for operating. And people, it's not the same information environment as it was 20 years ago. People are looking at this and going, I don't like the way this feels or looks. I'm going to the store and things don't seem as affordable. My house is no longer as affordable as it was before. My energy bills, all these things all add up for everyone. And there's never just one catalyst for the move in a hard money asset, but certainly, Mike, there's a lot going on here that normal people are now paying attention to, and maybe more importantly, have the ability to protect themselves against with these things.
Well, let me finish one of the challenges that people have if they're not involved in the space, if they're not familiar with the space, other than sort of these snippets of here's Bitcoin, it's made another record high, that kind of level of understanding. Where do you start? They can listen to the Canadian Bitcoiners podcast, seriously. But if I want to actually make an investment, is that where the ETFs have sort of at least helped out in that way that I know how to buy and sell on the stock exchange, so maybe I just do it that way to get my foot in the door.
I really do think the ETFs are the way to go for first timers. Again, like I'll catch some flack from my peers for that, but I do think that there's a barrier that has to be overcome. And if you're an investor, you know this already, whether you're an equity investor, bond investor, real estate investor, gold investor, or Bitcoin investor. When you started, you got into X asset because you liked the way that price was moving, and you liked the way that thing could fatten up your wallet a little bit and feather your nest a little bit. And it wasn't until later you discovered, what exactly the junior miners are, what exactly NVIDIA is doing on the chip side and graphics card side, and what exactly it means to have immutable, uncensorable, very difficult to confiscate money in terms of Bitcoin, gold, et cetera. And the ETFs provide a way for you to see, this thing is actually beating the S&P. It's beating inflation. It's beating whatever over the last 10 years, 12 years. This is something I want to be in. There's ways, of course, that I think are also important. And, without getting into the nitty gritty, to self-custody your Bitcoin that will protect you from what I think is coming down the pipe in terms of censorship and the expectation that government's going to have an eye on everything you do, buy, et cetera. But start with something easy. $10 into an ETF or $20 into an ETF. Do a little research. Listen to my show, and there's lots of information out there. Like I said earlier, it's not the information environment of 1995. There's plenty of places you can go, and plenty of people who have no financial, nothing financial to gain by signing up one more person to think about hard money. The Bitcoin price doesn't move on your $20, but it's better for everyone if people start thinking this way. And I think Bitcoiners get that.
Well, I'd add also that I think we've become an increasingly restrictive society. That's a huge debate. And there's a huge divide in that in Canada, those who value their individual freedom, those who, want the government to protect them, whatever rationale is, it's for your public safety. But I think each one of those, every time the government does something, people pay attention. And that actually gives a boost to the impetus to get involved with, Bitcoin and gold and a few other things. But I think that provides a boost. We had our bank accounts frozen in Canada. That's got to send a pretty big message to people. They froze Russian assets, which, whether we like it or not, has sent a huge message geopolitically, across the board. You have China emptying out of its U.S. Treasury bills, and gold has filled a lot of that void. But I think that's the environment we're in that will actually create a further platform for moves in this direction with that kind of independence from government fiat currencies. So I think you're going to be busy, but I also want to let people know you're coming to Vancouver. You're going to be at the World Outlook Conference coming up. First time out there, be great to have you. You'll love being able to chat with everybody there, and get the input, and they'll be looking forward to hearing you talk about it. So first of all, Joey, thanks so much for finding time today. We'll chat again soon, I hope.
Can't wait. Good to see you guys again.